A warden watching the veil between two worlds. Hi, I'm Alicia. This is Crafty Coven. Welcome to my kitchen side, the only place I could find where I could film myself painting on an easel. I really need to figure out a setup for when I'm painting. Anyway, I digress already. This is going to be a long one. So I have got 4 colours on my paint palette. I have got teal, black, white, and a tiny bit of violet. And all I'm doing is adding different amounts of each to my makeup blusher brush because I want a really misty, cloudy vibe. And I'm starting in the center lighter, and then I'm going to add a bit more black to it, and we're going to go around it. And then I add too much black to it, so we end up going over the whole thing, and we're going to come back in later and lighten it up. This is something I love about acrylic. Because it dries so quickly, you can just come back in 10 minutes and you can correct your mistake, because I did not mean to go in this dark at all. So, but it's not an issue because, like I said, we can just come back in and we can correct it. What I am going for is celestial magic, nebula, cosmic, otherworldly. That is what I'm going for. But I want it to be very smoky, cloud-like. I don't want it to be galaxy. So I'm just going to keep going in with my layers, and all I'm doing is sort of like little circle motions round and round. And I'm going to build up the colours, and I want different patches of colour across. But generally speaking, I want a tealy highlight halo just off centre is the plan. I've had some of you say that you cannot paint. You can paint. Painting is not a gift, it is a skill. Skills can be learned. If you'd ever like me to go into like an actual tutorial as opposed to show you my process, I'm more than happy to do that, but you will have to drop a comment to let me know that you'd like me to do so. I am taking a lot of black in with this patch because I want the outer edge to also almost be vignette. Is that what it's called? Where it's like an eye, where it darkens at the corners. I know what I mean. And I'm doing that to create the eyes to focus. I want to force focus on the canvas. Now I am also taking a touch of teal in with this black as well, because I don't just want it to be black. I want there to be smoky definition. So almost like you can see galaxies in the distance, like that swirl type thing. So each sort of patch is a different type of cloudy effect with different amounts of each colour. They've all got all of the colours in, so they all have teal, purple, blue and white, black and white in them. But they all have varying amounts to create this celestial nebula cosmic effect. I don't know what else to call it. So after allowing this layer to dry, I've taken a step back, and looking at it, I've decided I want some more cloudy structure across sort of like the top right third, which is all I'm doing. I'm just going in, but this time I'm adding more teal than I did before, just to give it a bit of definition, because like I said, I want that teal highlight halo, because the teal halo will force people's eyes to that part of the canvas, just a natural way that the brain works. After this layer dried, I then went in and was like, oh, I want like a purple smoky cloud across the top. Now, I purposely left this in because I do end up covering it up. But this is to show you that, you know, it doesn't matter what you do. If you have an idea in your head, put it down. If you don't like it, you can cover it. Acrylic paint is so forgiving. So I did this with purple. Didn't like the purple, so I added in some teal and some black just to kind of blend it out a little bit. and I still didn't like it. So all I did was allowed it to dry and I carried on. It's honestly, acrylics is, once you figure it out, it's easy enough. But it's like any medium, the more you practice, the easier it becomes. So here I am just correcting it. All I'm going to do is go in and I'm going to emphasize that teal halo. And I will expand it and expand it out until it covers up what I no longer want to see. So I'm just creating sort of like a cloudy, like a dust cloud, but I want it to be celestial. So I'm trying to blend and blur because I don't want any obvious lines. And at this point, I've got 2 brushes. I've got one brush that I am applying paint with, and then I'm then taking the other brush, which is dry, and almost removing paint with it to blend it out. Like I said, I don't want any harsh lines at all in this. Looking at the piece as a whole, I then decided that I wanted to add a bit of a teal to the left-hand side, and I added a touch of purple on the top right corner, just to add areas of interest so that it didn't look so black. Even though there is no direct black on this piece, for me, there were certain areas that just looked too black. It was at this point, I looked at my canvas and went, I hate it. I was so close to just getting some plain black and completely covering the canvas. And I have to remind myself, like I've said before, it's been a long time since I've done a lot of painting. And this is only my 4th or 5th project since restarting painting. And you have to remind yourself, trust the process. Trust the process. There is always a horrible part of painting where you just look at it and go, nah, I hate it. So I just carried on and thought, you know what, worst that happens is I've used a couple of hours of my life, which the painting de-stresses me anyway, so it's not the end of the world. Worst that happens is I paint over it. Or I let my daughter have it and she can paint over it. So it's one of those, I just have to remind myself that it doesn't always work the way you want it to. Now, all I did there was put some toothbrush spray stars on and a couple of gold cross stars. Now we are moving over to some resin. And I have taken my Let's Resin Galaxy Chameleon powder. And I wanted sort of like a purpley colour shifty teacup. This is a bat in a teacup. My bat is going to be my Warden. He is my Warden of my worlds. So I wanted this colour because I wanted to tie in sort of that undertone of violet within the canvas. Now to add just black resin. I'm doing it from quite a height because this is quite intricate. So I'm hoping that by doing a really thin stream from quite a height, it's going to knock the bubbles out. I do give it a jiggle and a wiggle and a tap and a squidge and a wish, but you know, we'll do everything we can to not have bubbles. Especially because this is going to be the main focal point of my painting. So I wanted it to be as perfect as I could get it. Now time for demold, and spoiler alert, I hated it. I demolded, and please tell me, what happened? Like, where has my purple bits gone? When I tell you, I wanted to yeet it over my shoulder. I'm not exaggerating. Like, where's the purple undertone gone? But anyways, after that I just left it on the side. I got annoyed at it, so I left it on the side for a day or 2. And then I was like, right, we're going to paint it and see what we can do with it. So I go in with some teal. I wanted bright teal eyes for this little bat because I wanted it to tie in with that teal halo highlight that I've got on the canvas. Looking at the wings, I wanted a highlight to the bone structure on the wings without it being white. White would have been far too harsh and I just wasn't keen on the idea. So to bring that violet in from the canvas that I didn't get on the teacup, I am adding violet highlights to my bat wings. And then I will take a touch of navy blue and mix that in with the violet to add a shadow underneath the bone on the wing. Is it the bone? But anyway, I'm going to add some shadow in sort of like a deep purple underneath the bone to allow the bat to feel more 3D and not so flat. Although, yes, it is 3D, it's still flat to a degree. Anyways, I digress. Again, I'm really good at that. Now, the cup. The more I looked at it, the more I hated it. So I thought, do you know what? I will go in just over the top with gold. I'm going to tie those gold stars in from the canvas to the teacup. Plus then as well, it gives the teacup sort of like a magical edge, because, you know, gold teacup, magic, whoa. And the fact it's got a teal undertone isn't the end of the world, because there's a teal undertone to the whole canvas, to the whole mood of this piece. So I take this bright gold as the basic colour of my teacup, and I just plonk it on, and then I leave it to dry. Once that's dry, I then come in with I want to call it like a metallic burgundy, but I have mixed a lot of water with this, because I'm almost wanting it as a wash. I want it to seep into the indentations on the teacup. So I'm putting it on the handle and on the pattern on top of the teacup, just to emphasize the detail on it, and it also gives it some depth. I did start off really neat and precise, and then I was like, what am I doing? Just plonk it on and then wipe it off the top. Do you ever do things like that where you just start something and you're like, why am I doing this the hard way, and like shake your head at yourself? This was one of those moments for me. We've got detail within the teacup. I wanted to add some highlights. So I'm taking just a little bit of rub and buff and adding it to where I believe the light would hit and elevate on this teacup. I always do this. I do rub and buff with my hand, and then I'm like, you got fat fingers, you can't get in there. Get a brush. So I take a brush instead and add some highlights, because, you know, fingers. Ah. I have also added highlight just to like the top of the handle and the rim of the cup. I really want, while I want this cup to pop, it's also not the main event, but it's part of the main event. So I need it to be as prominent as the bat, but not quite as prominent, if that makes any form of sense at all. Adding some UV resin to the bat's eyes, because the acrylic is matte. So it mattified the eyes, which I didn't want. I wanted them to feel real. Although it's not a realistic bat, I still wanted the eyes to have some form of connection with the viewer of the painting. Now we're going to leave the bat alone, and I was looking at my canvas, and for me, I believed it needed something else. So I am adding constellation, and it's a very specific constellation. I am adding Draco. He is the Cosmic Guardian Serpent, one of my favourite constellations, and the only one that I can draw from memory. I love it. So it's one of the few that I've actually learned. But I thought, you know, what a great connection to my Warden of my Celestial Brew, to my Warden between two worlds, to have his own guardian in the form of a constellation. It also would balance the layout of the canvas, because it's going to be slightly right-handed heavy, because the bat is slightly off center, so it helps with that too. I've used a toothpick and watered down gold paint to create my constellation, because while I want it bright, I didn't want it as bright as pure paint. And I've used a toothpick because I don't have any really thin paintbrushes. I have now ordered some. Now on an ever so slight tangent, kind of, I preemptively put the back down just to have a look to see how it fit in with its background. And it felt a little nah. So I took some gold and some teal and I put it round the rim of my poor Jack Skellington cup to create celestial rings. So I paint it on, but then I kind of dab it off because I don't want solid gold rings because that's just going to look naff. I wanted it to be a bit more mystical than that. So I've done it sort of faint. Some bits are thicker than others. I didn't want it to be perfect. And I've then added a small arc to the bottom right of the canvas just to balance the composition. Composition, that's the word I was looking for earlier. Some of the lines were a bit thicker than I wanted, so I just took my sponge and my paint cloth just to remove a touch of the paint. I have also added, as you may be able to see in the center of the screen, I have added an upside down triangle. And this upside down triangle is an alchemy symbol and it's for water. And I just thought, you know, what a way to tie in the tea from the teacup, add that in to my piece. I have also now decided, once I put the backpack down again, it needed something just a little something, not much, a little. So I've added like a vortex swirl. And again, more than anything, this balances the composition. It's really hard to explain, but when you look at something, you kind of know. And then after all this, I then put the back down again and realised that I then off-centred the left. Now I wanted to leave the bottom left as negative space because negative space works really well. But there was a touch of space that I thought, what can I put in there? So I thought I'm going to put an almost hidden symbol in. I'm going to add in the triple goddess moons in a constellation. But I'm going to do it so faint that you can only see it in certain lights. Just as almost like a hidden element to my piece. And I love it. I love it. Simple things. I'm taking some 5-minute Gorilla epoxy resin. I think that's what it's called. It's the Gorilla Glue company, but it's their 5-minute epoxy resin. And I am spreading this on the back of my bat. And I don't really want to use regular epoxy resin because that takes too long. UV I wouldn't be able to use anyway. And hot glue you've got to be so careful on because it's a canvas board, it could warp the board. And because this is quite a chunky piece, I knew it was going to need a lot. So I went in with that and I left it overnight. When I come back to it in the morning, I decided I wanted to add just a tiny bit of shadow to the edge of the bat so that it didn't just feel like a resin piece stuck on a canvas. Although that's what it is, I didn't want it to feel that way. By adding just a really, really, really watered down deep teal, it added a shadow that almost made it feel like he was coming out of the canvas. Time for some matte sealer. I've gone with matte just because it emphasises the gloss of the bat then. So by having a matte background, it makes the bat pop. I do 3 coats of this, I believe, but I only film one for you because you don't need to see it. But watching that almost like unveil the paint, oh my goodness. I mean, the difference. Yeah. To say that as I started to do this, I was like, I'm so glad I didn't paint over it in black. To watch it finally come to life, like seeing those little dashes of purple and the cloud. Yeah. I am in love with this piece in general. But that is all for today. So thank you very much for watching. And I am going to leave you with this. Sometimes magic hides in the most ordinary places, even in a cup of tea.